Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weatherboys podcast. I am Derek Kevra. That is Alan Longstreet. Together we make up the Weatherboys. This is our podcast where we force you to listen to things that we find interesting, even if you don't. Hey, buddy.
Sometimes we find them interesting. Other times we just got to fill space.
Yes. Big day in the city of Detroit.
Yeah. Big day. Huge day. We got 4 hours and 9 minutes now. 2:51. We're ready to go. Although tip-off probably isn't 7 o'clock. I know. Yeah. Game 1. Here we go. Round 2. Cavs. Whatever. JB's old team. He's gonna freaking take them. How many years has he been the coach? 2 years? 3 years? I don't remember.
Feels like a lifetime.
Yeah. Cleveland kicked him to the curb, and we're better off for it. And there's a lot of intrigue, a lot of storylines. Man, I'm excited. I'm real jazzed about this.
Were you ever nervous in the Magic series? Because I'm going to be honest, and I know hindsight's 20/20, and I know that a lot of people will change their opinion later and be like, I never was nervous, but I was never really nervous of the Magic. I was never nervous of the Magic.
Yeah. Oh no. Well, what do you mean? Never?
Yeah,
like, not at all.
Even down 3-1, I was like, we're going to come back and win. Obviously,
brother, you weren't watching the game. Did you watch Friday? You're telling me that you weren't nervous down 3-1, down 24 points in the third quarter. You're telling me that you weren't nervous in that moment?
I did turn the game off.
Of course you were nervous in that moment. Yeah, of course. Who didn't? Everybody did. I think the team would understand if you did.
Yeah.
But you're right, though, to hold your loyalty and your beliefs strongly up until that point. Leading into the game, I was with you. And then during the game, I said, oh, no, really?
There's just certain teams in sports that just don't really strike fear into you. And I don't know if this was back because the same thing happened in 2004, right? Like we were down 3-1.
Yeah, 0-3.
0-3. Yeah, we were down 3-1 to the Magic, and we came back and won. And like even back then, I remember thinking like the Magic are just not a team that scares you. Like or me, I'll just speak to me.
Sure,
they just weren't a team that scared me.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I was in the same boat. I agree with you. And then Cleveland, I don't know what to think. I don't know. I mean, I feel like the Pistons could beat anybody and lose to anybody. Mm-hmm. I think that's the honest answer, and I choose optimism. They're going to make it to the finals, man. They could very well win. I feel more nervous about that, but they could absolutely do it.
I felt uber confident today until I talked to Josh Landon because he was walking by the weather office.
Sure, yeah.
And I go, yo, Josh. He came in. I said,
yo, Joshy, what's up, Josh boy? Yo, Josh.
Get in here. So he came in. I said, we're not scared of the Cavs. And he goes, we're a little scared of the Cavs.
Sure.
And I was like, wait, really? The Cavs? He goes, yeah, we're a little scared of the Cavs.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The thing is, these are the best players in the whole world. Every single team. I mean, I know any given Sunday means football, but it applies to basketball as well. Like, anybody could win at any time.
But that's the difference, though. It's a 7-game series, not a 1-game series. Like, in a 7-game series, the better team is going to win that 7-game series.
I disagree. I mean, most of the time I think that you're correct, but not all of the time, because the case in point would be the Magic and the Pistons. I mean, we were moments away from it being, we're done, and their coach has an extension and is going on to the next round. And would that have meant they're the better team? I don't know. I think
they didn't win.
What's that?
But they didn't win.
I know that. I know, yeah, for sure.
So the better team won the 7-game series, despite the fact that there was a point in the series.
We need a logician. What is it called? Someone who works with logic? Because all we're doing is saying whoever wins is the better team.
A logician.
I call it a logician. Like a logic master.
Like a magician, but with logic. I kind of love it.
Yeah. I'm sure it's not correct.
Yeah.
But then we're just saying that every team that wins is the better team, which is just hindsight, which is 2020.
Yeah, but you're not wrong when you say that. I like that.
Yeah.
Because I say it and it's true.
Okay, so let's do it. What's going to happen? What do you think? Not tonight. Well,
Pistons win in
tonight
5.
And the series.
Pistons win in 5.
Okay, and let's go beyond that. And then what?
I think the Pistons
that'll put us in the Eastern Conference Finals.
The Pistons will be in the finals against the Knicks. I'm not scared of the Knicks, even though my buddy in New York says that the Pistons are trash and that they want.
Dude, oh my God, I cannot. You know what? You've changed things for. You haven't changed things. I hate the Knicks too, but I hate them even more now.
Yeah,
I'm sure your friend is delightful, but I want them to win so bad.
Yeah,
he's the worst. Okay, good.
I hate that guy.
Great. Okay, so Pistons in the finals.
Pistons in the finals. I think we beat the Knicks in 6. I think we win the next series in 5. We beat the Knicks in 6, and then I think we're in the finals against either Kansas City or the Spurs. I would rather play Kansas City.
Well, let's back it up here a second, buddy.
Okay.
Because there ain't no Kansas City playing in these NBA playoffs.
Oklahoma City.
OKC. Yeah.
Yes, my apologies. Yeah, those are the only 2 teams that scare me, and I think we're going to face one of them in the finals, and I think it's going to be a heck of a finals.
Yeah, and you know the crazy thing is the Spurs just lost yesterday to the old Minnesota Timberwolves.
What next?
So they're down 1-0 now. So yeah, but again, you're right. It's a 7-game series. So
But I
This
will
is why
say
I
this.
just love it. I love it. It makes me so happy.
I will say this with complete confidence, and
Yeah.
I will fight anybody. The better team will win.
The better team will win, for sure. The better team always wins, except for the Lions and the Niners 2 years ago in the division finals.
That
Did the better team win that day?
No,
Was it
but
the
that's
better
an any
team?
given Sunday situation. Those are not apples to apples.
So, no, I agree with that. It is not the same comparison. 7-game series does matter, but the worst team in the 7-game series can still win at times. I love your teeth; they're so beautiful.
How did they look?
Oh, you went? You really did go? You're still carrying it on?
What
You
did you think
left me.
What did
You
you think I was
left me
lying?
alone. You left me. Yeah, you're lying. You left me alone at work today, all by myself, and then you got nothing to do. Said you're going to go to the dentist.
Oh, you mean after I finished a full shift of work, and I told you after my shift today I'm going to go to the dentist? You thought I was lying about that?
Yes, I did. But now I don't. I see your teeth. They look very white. Is that a filter?
The dentist, I'll tell you what though, it's a weird thing that happens with me is
Sure.
they do the whole scrapey thing, and I hate it, and yet at the
So they
same
use
time
the
I love
machine,
it.
that little metal thing.
Yeah, and
I hate that.
I hate the feeling, and I love the feeling. It's like it's like when you're sore after working out. It's like you feel
Oh, for sure. It
in a weird
does,
way.
yeah.
It feels good, but you hate it. It
For
hurts,
sure,
but it
you can
feels
go
good.
coat your teeth in sugar, and it's fine because they're so clean. You know what I heard just now, like 30 minutes ago? Someone was railing on the ridiculousness of dentists. They're like, dentists are scam artists. You don't have to go to the dentist. They're just using these machines to get money. That's all. It was in a subreddit. I was looking at the Pistons, and then somehow I got to that. That's all. That's my whole story. I have nothing else to say.
You know, Tom Hanks in Castaway did end up taking care of the problem by himself, so I guess he didn't need a dentist, did he?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that movie. I know what you're talking about. Did he rip his teeth out?
He used he used a rock and he knocked out his tooth. And it
God.
didn't look fun in the movie, and so I think
Yeah.
in real life I would prefer the dentist, the
I
scam
like that.
artist dentist.
Yeah, for sure. I love this guy. I love the scam artist dentist. Yes.
I've been going to the same dentist since I was this is not a joke, since I was like 4.
Oh wow. Oh, look at
Yeah.
you. That's gonna so wait, that's
But
okay.
they're retiring. They're retiring.
Yeah,
The
52
Tupins.
years.
They're twin brothers.
You go to how do you know who they're both dentists?
I couldn't tell. I had no idea. John
Identical.
and Joel Tupin.
Shut up. They named them
and-
John and Joel?
Yes, and I've been going to them since I was a little kid. They just retired.
Wait, they retire. Are they conjoined?
No, but they had a practice together. They did the practice together, and they both decided to, leave the practice together. So there you go. The Tupin brothers. Okay, let's hop into the podcast here, and we're going to get into just the introduction because we are very excited about today's podcast because this is one that's going to get real deep, ladies and gentlemen. This one is going to
Deep as
really...
Derek's cavities.
It's going to really stretch our minds, our spiritual minds, because we are talking today to Pastor Scott Phillips from First Presbyterian Church of Brighton. Scott leads one of the cornerstone churches in the city of Brighton. He is a big-time member of the community, and he has spent years not just preaching, but walking alongside people through all things real life, marriage, loss, purpose, doubt, all of it. We wanted to have him on because faith is one of those things, shapes how a lot of people see the world, especially us, and especially in moments where things don't go according to plan. But Scott's going to let us know maybe they're not going according to our plan, but a bigger plan. Those are things we're going to talk to him about today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Weatherboys podcast, Pastor Scott Phillips. Pastor Scott Phillips, we should, in the vein of journalistic integrity, acknowledge.
What happened? Didn't we do this once before?
Well, yeah, we should acknowledge two things. First off, that Derek's an idiot and didn't record. And the second thing, we should tell the audience we are related, you and I.
Yes, we are. We are. Yeah, you're my son-in-law. So, that's a tough thing to do.
Did you approve of him? How long did it take for him to convince you? Is this the thing that we still don't like him, or have you finally grown okay with it?
So here's the thing. I didn't have quite as much say because Missy is my stepdaughter. So I was one removed from that.
I see.
I had to say yes, dear, to my wife a lot more when it was related to the kids. So that's kind of how it worked. But no, when we first met Derek, we were impressed with him. But to be honest with you, we were more impressed with one of his friends.
Yeah.
We thought that would be a better relationship.
No, wait, is this true?
Yeah, it is.
I probably don't know this person, do I? This was back in Oregon?
Well, yeah. I mean, he had come by and had visited us along with Derek, and Melanie, my wife, was very impressed with Derek's good friend.
Gosh, what's his
So
name? I
when
need to
Missy
Google him.
said,
Who's this friend?
You
yeah, when
know
Missy
him,
said, no, the other one's my boyfriend,
right?
Melanie said, well, okay.
I like the other guy better.
He's
It was my
okay,
buddy
too.
Austin. So my buddy Austin was in town visiting me, and so he had met Melissa, and he was flying out of the Portland airport. And it was actually kind of crazy when you look back and think about it, because Missy was like, "Oh, I just started dating this guy. I barely know you, but do you want to sleep at my house because I live not too far from the airport?" And during that exchange, my now mother-in-law was like, "I kind of like that guy.
Oh, that's
He's
fantastic.
more respectful. I like that guy better." But she got stuck with me, so that's that.
Yeah,
So you
but
didn't
you are.
think this story was going to go that way at all, Derek, when you asked me to do this. You thought it was going to be totally not.
Yes, we need to pivot. We need to pivot as quickly as we can. We're not here to talk stories about me. We're here to talk about God and how religion has evolved over the years. Let's begin, Scott, with just your story. Born and raised not here in Michigan, but on the West Coast.
Yes. Yes. And so, and here's the one thing I'll just tell you real quick. Us pastors, we like to tell stories and we go on and on and on sometimes. So you tell me when, okay, that's enough.
Derek could be a really good pastor,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, 'cause my wife is really good at this. She sits in the front row of the pews, at church, and she'll give me, kind of one of these gestures.
No way, that's fantastic.
Do a pray sign. That means, okay, you're done.
Do you ever have to like shake her off and you're like, no,
Oh,
honey, I'm on a roll.
I don't know if she's trying to tell me to steal second base or
Exactly.
if I just said
So
something
good.
stupid. So that's kind of how it works. Anyway, yes, I was born in New Mexico. My dad worked for a company that was bought out by Hewlett Packard, and so we moved to San Diego when I was 8. So I grew up in San Diego, did all my schooling there, all my undergrad there, and everything before I went to seminary. So yeah.
So Scott, were you like an 8-year-old kid who was like sitting out front reading the Bible? You knew your whole life you were going to be a pastor, a man of God. Is that your story?
No, but here's the thing. When we moved to San Diego, I did not know that everybody didn't go to church. I just assumed that everybody went to church because everybody I knew went to church. So when we moved into San Diego, the family across my street did not go to church. And it blew my mind. I thought, well, what do you do on Sunday? I don't get it. So yes, my family was always really, really tied into the church. And I kind of thought I want to be a teacher eventually. I really like teaching, but I could not have ever imagined myself being a pastor for two reasons. One was I was pretty afraid to speak in front of people. I knew I could do it with a small class, but doing it in front of a big congregation, I'd never thought I'd be able to pull that off. And the second thing is I didn't think I was smart enough. I mean, honestly. And so, the transition to becoming a pastor, I'd gone to a community college and I was a year and a half into community college, and I got a letter from the community college that said, if you don't bring your GPA up to a 2.0, you're going to be put on academic probation. And I was at a solid 175. I mean, I was solidly at a 175. And I'd gotten this letter. I didn't tell my parents because I didn't know what academic probation was all about, but I knew it wasn't good. I was still living at home. I was working part-time at a church. And later that weekend, I was like the assistant to the youth pastor. And the youth pastor said to me one day, sitting in the office, he said, I think you could be a pastor. I think you should go to seminary. And I thought to myself, how on earth will I ever go to graduate school if I can barely get through community college with a 175 GPA? And so I looked at my classes and I knew I had a solid C in everything except oceanography. I might be able to pull a B in oceanography. So I studied like crazy in oceanography and I got the B. So I had the 2.0. And from that point on, since I knew kind of what I wanted to do, I think I had an idea of what I might be possible. Somebody else said, this is what I see in you. That's what started me. And after that, I was able to get through it and I had a goal and a vision and it was good.
I know this isn't what we're here to talk about, but was it because you found the thing that made you feel alive, that drove you, like it was more enjoyable to do the learning? Because it's not like you're not dumb. You can't be dumb to do what you're doing. You had to like learn a really large amount of information and distill it down for common folk like, me and your son-in-law.
Well, I won't go there. But yes, I think that what felt like a deficit to me really became a strength because I knew I had to work hard, and I also knew that I didn't learn the same way that others did. I kind of wasn't a great reader. And so I started dedicating myself to reading. I started reading in college. And when I got to my last year of college, I really didn't have to take anything else. I forced myself to take another lit class because I knew reading was that was the thing that held me back. But what I also realized is in the midst of that, is not everybody understands the big fancy words that are going on, that pastors often use. And I realized that my job wasn't to be smarter than everybody else. My job was to try to figure out how to meet people where they are and help make faith, you know, I mean, it's kind of a mystical thing, but help make it attainable, accessible to people. And I think because I struggled with my own education, I recognize that there are probably other people struggling as well with understanding issues of faith. And if I could understand that enough to be relevant and to be authentic with people, then I would be able to do this. And that's what, having somebody else look at me and say, I think you could do this. A guy that was already a pastor had already been through this. He said, him saying to me, I see gifts in you. I think you can pull this off. That made all the difference in the world for me. And then I just had to be my true, authentic self as I went through it, because that's really what connects with people. If you're faking it, too many of us pastors think we got to fake it. Um, no, you got to be authentic. You got to be your real you. And then I think you can become more successful in what we do.
But Scott, you said the word faith, and I feel like with organized religion, it doesn't have to be organized, just with religion, faith is what it comes down to. Is it one of those things where you have it or you don't? Or is it something that can be taught?
Um, I'll say that I think faith is much more organic than that, because when you use the word faith, it could be talking about your beliefs. So you have certain beliefs that you hold on to, certain things you adhere to. When you talk about religion, a lot of it's talking about your practice. It's talking about the duties you feel you need to do, going to church, reading the Bible, praying. It's those religious duties. So faith is your belief. Religion is kind of your duty part of it. Somewhere in between that, it meets with your real life personhood. And your real life personhood is when you are trying to decide, how do I process the fact that someone I know just got cancer? How do I process the fact that I'm in love with somebody, but they're not in love with me? How do I process the fact that when I look in the mirror, what I see is something that I don't like? And so really, when we as pastors, if we think we're like trying to sell something, we're we're going to fail. I'm not a salesman. I'm not trying to sell you on something. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help you as an individual person, a creation who was created by God, connect with the God who loves you and created you. I'm trying to help you make that connection with the real, true, and living God, so that your journey of life has meaning and purpose, and you recognize, hey, God made me special. God made me, the gifts that God has given me are the gifts that God gave me. And so really, I'll have people come into my office and say, I don't know, I don't understand all these stories. I don't know how this meet. And my job is to help them see where God is in the midst of what they're doing in life and trying to connect with that. So I don't know. It's a different calling than I think what a lot of people think it is. I'm not trying to peddle. I'm not trying to peddle religion to people. I'm trying to help their life connect with the God I believe that loves them and cares for them and wants what's best for them.
When you put it like that, it kind of, I guess, already answers my next question, but I want to get into like the struggle with religion and science, because I feel
Mhm.
like there is, especially within the last 60 years, there's this like, well, you can't be a scientist and still be a person of faith, because you need to see the evidence, you need to see the experiments and see it, and religion is kind of not that. Do you feel like you have people that you've worked with over the years where it's almost like they're trying to be too much of a scientist about it, and it's taking away from some of the lessons that they could otherwise grasp?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the divide between religion and science is not quite as big as what we think. And what's interesting is if you look out there, like for example, the idea of a Big Bang theory that originated by a monk. There was a monk that really looking at creation and understanding that was the one that came up with the idea of a Big Bang theory. If you look at the Old Testament scripture, in Genesis, in the beginning was, you've got this, God said, "Let there be light." And when you look at this process of creation, it doesn't fit exactly with evolution, but there's an awful lot of connection there. There's probably more connection. And so what you have is you have ancients, you have people, you know, uh, trying to make sense of the world around them, and they make sense by talking about what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. And they tag on to that things that we now label as faith, and things that maybe we look at later that we say, well, science has proven that that was just wrong. And yet at the same time, yeah, I mean, the world's not flat. You've got other issues of science where we've kind of proven that this is wrong. And there's still, I gotta say, there's still some religious folks that adhere to it's got to be this literal truth. It's got to be absolute literal truth. I'm not in that place where it's an absolute literal truth. I think you've got, this person, thousands and thousands of years ago who's trying to make sense of the world, and they describe this world in such a way that, a scientist might say, well, there's things that are truth in that. So,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Sometimes it can be kind of a blend of both. Like as we grow and as time passes, little bits of
yeah.
both can be true at the same time, and that can be part of the problem with science. Is so often it's black and white, and religion is often not that.
Yeah, and there's things that science, you realize in science, wow, we were wrong about that. That wasn't exactly the way it was. And so something new comes up and you go, oh, look, there's more to this that we got to dive into. The same thing happens with faith too. There's more things that we have to dive into. The more I learn about who God is, the more I realize what I don't understand. That's the one thing that drives a lot of really conservative Christians crazy, is that they'll read somebody who's like Richard Rohr, for example. They can read Richard Rohr, who has got these amazing things to say about the world and everything else, and they look at that and they go, wow, he's so way off base. But Richard Rohr is one that says, kind of like, the more I learn about who God is, the less I understand, because the vastness of who God is just beyond comprehension. I think sometimes scientists do the same thing, only their drive is, but I got to figure it out. I've got to come up with an answer of how this works. For us in faith, we kind of just say, we may not be able to answer this one. And
Yeah,
that's
and I
okay.
and I think
That's
there's a
okay.
lot of times science can't answer it either. And what is science but a search for the truth as well? And like I think there is a false idea that religion, Christianity equals unintelligent. That's why I love people like Francis Collins, the language of God. Like,
Yeah.
there are, C.S. Lewis back in the day, when he was at, my memory's bad, some big school in England, and he talks about the conversion of faith from some of his most, he said many of his religious friends at school are physicists.
Yeah.
And there are these people who are way smarter than the normal folks, and they get to the end of their careers and they're like, at the end, we know a lot, but we don't know the answer to these questions.
Right.
And there's
Right.
some quote about the gap between what we know and what we don't. Like, that gap there is not any bigger than the gap between if there's a God or not. And I'm generalizing. There probably are people who are ridiculous on both sides, but I think if you look for it, there's a lot of things that do make sense between the two.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And one of the things is if we think that we're trying to fight against each other, we're trying to prove the other one wrong, rather than trying to listen to the truth that is in what a scientist might say, and a scientist looking at the truth and what a theologian might say, they might find that there's a lot more agreement than there is disagreement. Let me just get into kind of a little cultural example. The last Dan Brown book blew me away. The what's it called? Something about secrets. Secret of Secrets. The Secret of Secrets.
I think it's on my bookshelf right over there.
Bookshelf.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting in there because the scientist in there is an atheist, but he's also recognizing that there's things that are happening in the medical science that they're looking at right there that religion has defined in another way than what the religious science has, or the scientists are kind of, the medical scientists are trying to describe it. But somewhere in the middle, there's a meeting, and they come together. And because you're a scientist, you can't allow that theologian to make sense. So you stick with science, and this, the theologian can't always let the scientist make sense. And so we battle each other rather than saying, wow, you're coming at this from a completely different angle than I am. Let me show you something. I got this this elephant that sits
Yeah.
on my desk. Now the reason I have this elephant is because there's a story about these five blind monks, and they encounter an elephant, and they start describing the elephant. And one of them says, you know what? The elephant is kind of like a snake. And the other one says, no, no, no. The elephant is like a large leaf. And the other one is saying, no, no, no. The elephant is like a tree. And the other one's saying, no, no. The elephant's like a rope. And one of the other ones said, no, the elephant's like a wall. And the reason they're describing it that way is because one of them is only touching the trunk, another one's only touching the ear, another one is touching the leg, another one is touching the tail, another one is touching the side of the elephant. And what their description is of the elephant by which they're experiencing, what they're touching. They're all right and they're all wrong. And I think that's sometimes how theology and science need to begin to see each other. I mean, whenever you're trying to talk about God, someone may say, well, God is like, and as soon as they say God is like, they're going to have the part of who God is by what they're touching at that time. And we listen to someone who's describing God in such a really different way from us, and we don't realize we can learn something from that, because ultimately we're only looking at part.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to put on my little kid hat because my kids are at the age where they ask all these questions. Why can't God just make it easy, Pastor Phillips, and just show us the whole picture and let us know everything? Why do we have to struggle with doubt?
Amen, Alan.
Uh-huh.
Because the struggle is often where the discovery happens, right? You think about your learning process. When you really have to work at something, you're internalizing it the more you work at it. You got to walk through the struggle before you fully understand. And so, the Apostle Paul says at one point, he's talking about what the greatest thing is, and he goes through this. In 1 Corinthians 13, he talks about love is patient, love is kind, love is not not angry or boastful or arrogant or rude. And he goes through all these things of what love is and love isn't. And then towards the end of that, he says that, he talks about seeing in a mirror dimly, but later we'll see face to face. And so he talks about the fact that, we struggle through these things to try to understand. And so as we're struggling through a process of trying to understand what love is all about, what God is all about, we discover parts of it in our journey. And if we don't have that struggle, we don't ever own it. We don't, you think about the things that you've accomplished. The things that you work the hardest at are the things that you cherish the most. And so when it comes to God, there's a lot of things that are really easy about attaining knowledge of who God is. I mean, I go outside, I look at a sunset, I watch, I listen to the birds, I look at creation, I think, oh my gosh, the vastness of creation just blows my mind, right? So there's certain places that are easy, but when I'm struggling with somebody who has just lost a loved one and they're struggling with faith, what I recognize is that struggle is going to move them a little bit deeper to the place where God meets them in the sense of their brokenness. The community of faith surrounds them in their sense of brokenness, and that struggle is what often produces a deeper, deeper faith. But we have to allow people to struggle, and that's what a lot of us pastors don't want to do. We think that our job is to fix everybody.
Ah,
Our job is to provide everybody with answers. And sometimes our thing is to listen to people and help them just take the next step down that path, you
Scott,
know?
are
Yeah.
people generally scared to talk about God?
You know what they're scared about? They're scared about admitting that they don't understand it all. And so when I have people come into me, I mean, some people might be afraid to talk about God because they're afraid if they talk about God and they say something wrong, then I'm going to, judge them. And I'm saying, oh, no, 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 no. I think so. Sometimes there is a fear of people talking about God because they're afraid they're going to get something wrong. But I think it's also true that people are afraid of really admitting that they're struggling with belief. Um, I've had conversations with people. The one guy not long after I got here, he's no longer in our church. They moved. But he came to me and he was really struggling. His wife had died. He was left with two kids. He was really struggling. And I remember him saying to me, he goes, I'm probably the only atheist in our church right now. And I said, you know what? My hunch is you're not, but you're the only one that's able to sit here and admit it. And that's okay. Because you know what? I think that the road ahead of you sometimes is admitting that I don't have all the answers, and I just I've got to continue to move forward. And I think then God's going to provide you, if you really truly keep searching, God's going to provide you with the comfort you need, with the answers you need, or God's going to put on your heart, hey, I don't need to answer that question. You move beyond some of your questions that you're struggling with. So I don't know if that answered your question, Derek. I mean, yeah, people struggle with talking about God because they don't feel like they know enough or because they feel like they don't believe enough.
Well, and partly I think because there's what's that famous line? The two things you don't talk about is politics and religion.
Right.
And the older I get, the more I wonder why, like why don't you talk about religion? Just because somebody might have a different opinion than you, and then what? You have a spirited discussion about beliefs, and maybe you learn something. It seems counterintuitive as I age.
Well, I mean, when it comes to both of those things, we hold those things as really important. We hold our beliefs as really important. And when someone disagrees with our beliefs, again, it's hard for us to to see that person and just recognize, hey, this person isn't where I am. Um, and so I think we're afraid that if we talk about those things, we're gonna not like each other. To be able to say, I always tell people we have a fairly purple church, right? We've got some people that are very much on the right, and we have other people that are very much on the left. And you know, what I think is so important is that we can disagree adamantly about certain things, but then we got to be able to go to coffee hour together and sit down at a table and say, "Wow, I don't understand where you're coming from," but we can still be friends because if we think I might be able to learn something from you, um, you have to start with I might be wrong on this, but I might be able to learn something from you. What a much better place for us to be. We learn from each other, even when we disagree adamantly.
does that work at your church? Because I feel like the last 10 plus years, that's been the whole conversation in our world, especially America, like that these two sides no longer are around each other and they won't even listen. They'll just wait for their turn to shout insults at the other.
Um, I think it's working okay for us. It's hard. It is really hard. It is much easier to be a full-on liberal church or a full-on conservative
Sure.
church.
Yeah.
Much easier. It's much harder to do the kind of ministry that we attempt to do. I try to stay. I don't talk about politics, but after a worship service, someone may come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, I know who you were talking about." Hey, I was talking about Moses. I was talking about Moses. If you saw somebody else in that, that's on you. Now, was
Sure.
I thinking about somebody else when I was talking about Moses? Maybe.
Maybe.
But I try to stick with Moses. I try to stick with what's going on in scripture. And that can cause us angst when it doesn't fit into our box. And so one of the things I often preach about is we're not, we need to be listening to the voice that God gives us. And sometimes it's not going to be the same voice that we hear coming out of our politicians that we believe in, the news that we choose to watch, watch and listen to. Um, and I will tell you that in churches in the past, the people that have left my church have been the ones on both extremes. I've had people leave my church because we did something that was not fitting with their conservative understanding. And I've had people leave my church because we didn't take a strong enough political stand on something. And my thing is, you know what? I can do that. I can preach to the choir, but I also can recognize that we're a big, diverse people. Jesus had a fairly diverse group of disciples. He had zealots and he had people that were probably fit more with the Pharisee. I mean, he was able to accept and at the same time reject a lot of the political groups that existed during the time that Jesus walked the earth. And that's what was so fascinating about him, I think.
Let's talk a little bit about religion and death, because initially I would think that death might be the hardest part of your job. But now hearing you talk, I'm wondering if maybe it might be one of those times where people are the most open to listening about Jesus, about God. What as a pastor of a church, you're around death a lot. I mean, you're what are your experiences with it?
Well, when I first started in ministry, the thing I feared the most was having to do a memorial service. I was so worried about that. I just was really afraid that I wouldn't know what to say and all of that. The longer I'm in ministry now, the more I recognize that that is one of the most significant things that I can do is sit with someone when they are just raw with emotion. And what I get to do, and I sit with them, and we plan the service and all that kind of thing, but we also sit with them and I say to them, tell me about, and they'll tell me stories about their loved one, and I'll listen to those stories and I'll say, wow, it sounds like they were really really a caring person. Or I might say, wow, they were really smart. I didn't realize that they kind of had that in their background. So the more we talk about them, the more their memory lives in them, right? And so it's a time where I can enter into just the extreme rawness of the situation. And what I do is I allow people to talk about who they loved. And then I often look at this as a kind of time where I try to teach them, in the very beginning of creation, God said everything was good, right? I mean, we read the story of creation. God created the light and it was good. God created animals, it was good. God created the water, the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, it was good. Everything is God, it was good, good, good. There's one place in creation where God said it's not good. And that was after God created the one human. There's two stories of creation, by the way. This is in the second one, in chapter 2 of Genesis. God creates one human. God said it is not good for that one to be alone. And so God creates the second human out of the first human and puts them in relationship. So God made us to need one another. And so when people are in the midst of this major pain and they say, I don't understand why this hurts so much, I always say, because God made us that way. God made us in such a way to need one another. We need to be in relationship with each other. We need to have other people around us. And so God created us with that need. Now, God's choice was I can create you as autonomous individuals who don't need another person for nothing. So it wouldn't hurt when someone died. But God made a choice, and that choice was to connect people through passion and love and care for one another. And the more you feel that, the more you're embracing what God created one another for. So we try to talk a lot about how we celebrate the life of that person. And then in terms of afterlife, a lot of times people have questions about afterlife. And, I always try to say, look, I'm not really sure exactly what it's going to be like, but I know that the promise is that there is something, there is a time where we are rejoined in what the perfection of creation was supposed to be about, where no death, no pain. Right now, we live in this broken world because God gave us the freedom to kind of do what we needed to do in this world, and we've kind of gone astray at times. Um, and yet, there's this other time, and I don't know too much about it, but I'm going to live my life now, enjoying everything that God has given me. And when that time comes, whatever that's going to be, I'm going to trust and be ready for that. But it
I'm,
is it is tough to enter in that with time with people.
I'm bummed you don't have more answers about heaven because my kids are going to be asking me after this. How old will I be in heaven? How old will you be in heaven? What kind of food can we have in heaven? Will our friends be there? How are all the people going to fit in heaven throughout all of history?
These are
So
good
you know how you
questions.
answer those questions for your kids?
Please,
You
please
say,
tell.
you say, I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, yeah.
And then they throw off some outlandish thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you say, yeah, you might be right.
Sure.
You might be right. Because you know what? Nobody knows.
I do like
Nobody
C.S.
knows.
Lewis's book. What's the one about heaven in the bus? I should
Oh,
know this
yeah, yeah,
before I
yeah.
bring it up.
I can't remember the name of it.
I don't
I've
know. That
read
was a
it.
good,
Miracles? Is it
yeah.
Miracles? I don't
It's not
remember.
that one. No, but he's very provocative with his language, and it's just an interesting. It's certainly not what heaven will be, but
Right.
it's a really unique way to look at it. The great. You know what? Next podcast, I'm gonna do a little more research and get these titles,
Get the titles.
back in the brain. But I read it and I remember I was moved in a way that I hadn't been before.
Yeah, yeah. And he has some really good stuff. C.S. Lewis has some really good stuff. If you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe,
Oh yeah.
the very last book in that, The Last Battle, kind of has a heavenly scene in there. And it's really interesting what he does with that. So if you ever read The Last Battle, I'd be intrigued to see what you think he's trying to explain about when he talks about the dwarfs.
Okay. The
Okay, so
last
that's
battle
your
of the dwarfs.
homework.
Okay.
Read
Great.
The Last Battle, and then you and I can talk later about what happened
Oh,
to the dwarfs.
I
Okay,
love it. It's the Great Divorce, by the way.
Great Divorce. Yeah, there
The
you go.
Great Divorce.
Divorce.
Yeah,
That's
maybe
it.
that's what you said, but yeah.
No, I
Scott,
think I said miracles. Yeah.
I don't. We could talk to you forever. We've only got about 5 minutes left. You're talking about how the one thing that was not good was being alone or
Yeah.
being together is important. Are you noticing the state of organized religion or the state of the church right now? Are people going to church? Are people coming back to church?
I think they are. I mean, we noticed that we've got more people now connecting with the church than we've had before. We used to have two services, and it was a very divided service. We had two services that were divided. And this is what a lot of churches did during that time because, some people like traditional music, some people like contemporary music, some people like a more relaxed worship service, some people like a more liturgical worship service. So we had two separate worship services, and it served us well for a long time. It was good, it served us well. COVID hit. We shut it down. We kind of tried to go back to what we had before, and we were just finding that it wasn't working for whatever reason. And so we did a combined worship service, and frankly, people thought this isn't going to work because you still got people that love contemporary music, and you still have people that love traditional music. What's interesting is as we've continued to do that, what we've found is that people were saying to me things like, "Gosh, I didn't know that person went to church," or "I didn't know that person,"
Hmm.
because they always went to the second service. And then we have coffee hour right after the first service, which my granddaughter, Derek, your beautiful daughter, most beautiful granddaughter in the world, Hadley says Hadley doesn't call it coffee hour; she calls it happy hour. And you know what? That's what
Because
this
Daddy
is.
drinks a lot of beers and margaritas.
That's
But
right.
Jesus made water out of wine, Derek. You're okay.
Hey, you're okay. You're okay, Derek. But what happened was our congregation came together in a different way than we had before. And we were now sitting, and we so the senior members of our church are sitting at tables, but they're also watching all these little kids running around
Yeah.
playing duck duck goose and all that kind of stuff. And it brought our community together. So I think what happens is now people are looking for community again. What happened was COVID happened, and all of a sudden they were taken out of community, and now they're trying to find community again. And again, one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to create a community that is not one size fit all. We want to create a community that is much more inclusive of what the world around us is all about. Unfortunately, we don't have the racial diversity at our church that I wish we had, but we do have other diversities in our church. And seeing all those folks come together, oh man, that's what makes it cool. And the other thing that's going on after COVID was we started live streaming our worship services. And so I'll have people come to church and they'll talk to me like they know me. And they'll say, oh, we watch you on TV. And I'm thinking, oh, that's great. So kind of what you guys get, right? Hey, I see you on TV. But they act like they know you because they have a relationship with you, right? Because they've come to the worship service. But now they want to experience in person. So that's kind of what I see going on. There's so much junk going on in our world right now. There's so much division going on in our world, and a lot of pain, a lot of brokenness. So I think people are looking for a place to be brought together again. You know what? That's what Jesus was all about. Bringing us together, Jews and Gentiles coming together. Rich and poor coming together, slave and free coming together. I mean, it was a unique body during the first century, and that's what we got to recreate. I don't know.
All right, we've got about 30 seconds left, so I'll end on an easy one. Prove God exists. Kidding.
Oh,
You know what? Somebody once told me, look at your hand and watch what your hand's doing. And you tell me that's an accident, what your fingers can do, what your eyes can see. Look around at the people that you love and care for and say, yeah, it's all by accident that I have this relationship. You're not going to be able to prove that there's a God. Boy, there's something out there. There's something out there that is a pretty wise being to give us this amazing world. So let's just not mess it up. Unfortunately, we're pretty good at messing it up. So let's not mess it up.
Man, Scott, I could listen to you talk all day. Thank God I'm related to you, and I kind of can. So
right.
This is good. Thank you, Scott, for your time. That was
Thank
that was
you
good.
guys for being interested in this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know we say this every time, but this time I actually mean it. I do have 72 more questions.
Okay.
And each one would take a very long time.
All right, let's do it again. You
Yeah.
send me a question. We'll see how we can go with it. Okay.
Beautiful.
All right.
All right, thank you, Scott, and thank you, everybody, for listening to the Weatherboys podcast. Of course, you can watch all of our episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and the Fox Local app. If you scroll down, there's a whole Weatherboys section with everything in there. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.